Well, there's only 4 left. There have been a couple of hires this week. The Anaheim Ducks have yet to make a move on a coach. It's been very quiet there. Pat Verbeek. I'll throw 2 names at you that I think are going to get some consideration. One is Kevin Dineen. Dineen was a former head coach of the Florida Panthers, coached for the San Diego Gulls for a couple of years, and then mysteriously got blown out after 2 good years in San Diego. He went to the New Jersey Devils. He's coaching their Utica Devils team in the American League and done really well. Might he merit a look? I think he's an NHL coach and waiting deserves a second chance. The other one was a guy in Tampa. And where did Pat Verbeek come from? Tampa and Detroit. A guy by the name of Jeff Halpern, assistant head coach for Tampa Bay Lightning. And John Cooper's had a really good run there on the Sun Coast. Those are 2 guys that I think that the Ducks are probably looking at. The New York Rangers, and this was a stunner, they fired Gerard Gallant. And who owns the Rangers? James Dolan. Gallant had a really good season, but they got 86th in the NHL playoffs, which is a surprise. Mm-hmm. They had made all these trades at the deadline to add Vladimir Tarasenko from St. Louis, and none of the pieces, they traded for 3 guys, none of them fit in well, and the Rangers got ousted from the playoffs really early on, so that was a surprise. The Rangers are talking to a whole bunch of different guys, and the one that they might settle on is a guy who just got bounced in Washington, Peter Laviolette, a longtime NHL coaching career. He may go in there, but to me, he's not very different than Gerard Gallant, who got fired. Calgary's looking for a coach. They also fired their general manager. Daryl Sutter got axed right at the end of the Flames season. They'd gone through transition. They had run a number of big money players out of there because they had salary cap issues. So they're in a little bit of a rebuild. Calgary is talking to Gallant. Gallant did a good job with the Rangers. And prior to that, Gallant was the first head coach of Las Vegas Golden Knights. And they were, as an expansion team, wow, look how good they were. Mm-hmm. So I think Gallant could wind up there in Calgary. And in Columbus, I'm not sure what they're going to do. They've gone through a lot of different coaches. Their general manager is a European, so maybe they go abroad and they take a look at another player from Europe because they've got a roster full of Swedes and Finns that play in Columbus for the Blue Jackets. There have been 2 jobs that have already been hired. Nashville has just hired Andrew Brunette, who I thought the Ducks might make a run at. He was 51-18 with the Florida Panthers and got fired a couple of years ago. It was really strange. He was an assistant head coach, New Jersey. He just went to Nashville, and Washington just hired maybe the hottest NHL assistant, Scott Carberry, another guy I thought the Ducks might move on. He's gone from the Toronto Maple Leafs to take that job in Washington. It's interesting, the names that are out there, check marks of names you would recognize. Daryl Sutter, who's been everywhere and has won cups in a bunch of different places, but he's really old school. I don't think he'd be a candidate for the Ducks job. Gallant, I think, is going to get hired. Joe Kenville, the former coach in Chicago, St. Louis, Florida, who was suspended by the league for 1 year because of what happened way back a decade ago with the Blackhawks and a sexual assault situation that was kind of covered up. Kenville is out there. Travis Green, ex-Vancouver coach, who had spotty results, some good, some bad, with the Canucks. He is out there. Really intriguing name is Patrick Waugh, the legendary goaltender of the Montreal Canadiens. He was a former head coach of the Colorado Avalanche, but he kind of self-destructed on the job, and he went back to junior hockey. When he retired, he became part owner of the Quebec Remparts, historical junior hockey team, guided them to the Memorial Cup, did really well, got back in the NHL, went to Colorado. It was kind of a rocky road. He left, went back to Quebec. He's got the Remparts playing in the Memorial Cup again. He keeps putting all his kids going to the NHL that played for him in Quebec City. Patrick Waugh would like another shot at the NHL, so he might well be. And the last name is Mike Babcock, who had real good success with the Detroit Red Wings. He'd been in Toronto. He'd been out here with the Kings. I thought the Ducks might take a flyer on him. But Pat Verbeek he's a second-year general manager. They have such a very young team. So do they want a young guy to work with the young kids, or do they want a taskmaster to take over? And, the intangible thing, this sounds stupid of me to say, and I know you're going to say I'm stupid. That's okay, because I don't care what you think in left field. Look what you're broadcasting tonight. The Ducks have the second pick in the draft. They're going to get a great player, probably Adam Fantilli, the University of Michigan. They have 11 draft picks. They now have 39 million cap space.
Oh, wow.
And they've got the whole ton of young guys that they force-fed last season that are all going to be back with a year under their belt that with NHL experience at age 20 and 21, et cetera. I think the Ducks job, you may think I'm stupid, but I don't care about that. I think the Ducks job might be as good a job as there is in the NHL because they got resources and they got assets.
Yeah, and you could be the coach that's going to turn the whole thing around and get the credit for all of that. So that would be terrific. So I have a question for you, Lee. I mean, you have a tremendous history broadcasting professional hockey, and as a hockey fan, who are some of your favorite coaches that you remember from yesteryear in the NHL?
My goodness, I crossed paths with so many guys. I was a huge Pat Burns fan, as witnessed by the success he had in Montreal and Toronto before he passed away. I thought Pat Quinn was one of the great motivators of all time as a head coach, and he's passed away. He was in Vancouver. He was in Toronto. The Irishman smoking a cigar, really cool. One of the unique guys I ever crossed with, and I'll tell you 30 seconds worth of the story. When I was in the World Hockey Association, I was in Cleveland and then in Indianapolis doing games. And Indianapolis had a coach by the name of Jacques Demers, a young guy. Jacques went on and won a Stanley Cup in Montreal with the Canadiens, had a good run with the Detroit Red Wings. He was illiterate. He could not read. There was something that did not allow him to process information. And when I found out about this after he retired from Montreal, he suffered a stroke and had to retire. And I thought all the conversations, because I got along really well with him, and I thought all the conversations, and I'd say, look at this. He said, oh, I didn't bring my glasses. I can't read that. And that was his explanation as to why he couldn't read. But the reality was he could not read, and yet he won. He knew hockey. He knew X's and O's. He knew how to push buttons with young players and old players. And I think he's one of the most unique guys I ever crossed with. So that's a 30-second hockey history story for you.
But isn't it interesting how it's almost like when someone loses their sight, they get superpowers with hearing or something else. So maybe the fact that he was illiterate gave him different kind of insight into the game itself. And that's probably what made him a great coach.
Yeah. It was some type of learning disorder. I never had the chance to talk to him about it, but fascinating guy. And he's still alive, but obviously he suffered a stroke and there was a setback there too. But so you asked the question, I gave you an answer. One more topic on